Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerantz in the Inland Empire today. We are joined by Mike Soubirous. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. And our last several appearances focused upon kind of good government questions, ethics questions. And you come with another great issue, one I had not considered. So sometimes I'll go to a charity event, or maybe UCR has some type of form, and I'll see a table sponsored by the City of Riverside or Riverside Public Utilities, or I'll see an advertisement that says, brought to you by Riverside Police Department. I want to talk about that. Let's focus on the sponsorships. How does that work when the City of Riverside sponsors a table at a chamber event?
Well, you know, it might be that Riverside Public Utilities, or maybe the police department, or maybe the fire department, even Public Works has in their budget to sponsor different events.
And let's remember, all of those organizations are arms of the city.
Absolutely.
Riverside owns a public utility.
Yes, they do.
Of course, the police department is part of the city.
Yes.
Public Works, part of the city. And so these are all city organizations.
Yes, yes they are.
Okay, so continue, sir.
Well, you know, and what my experience has been coming on board as a council member is that, you know, these different departments will sponsor different tables. It might be there might be 2 tables sponsored at an event. It might be 5 tables sponsored at an event. Maybe things that are more akin to that department's interest.
Sure.
And, you know, a lot of the times these tables are 10 and 12 person tables.
Right, so let's say you sponsor 3 tables, that's 30 people.
Yes.
Who gets to go?
Usually it's staffers, usually management, you know, usually the department head or their designee or
Which is
or
not
others.
a terrible thing.
Not a bad thing.
You know, they get to interact with the public. If the event is on point, it makes sense. But what if Mike Soubirous wants to go? How would that work?
Well, interesting thing, when I was a brand new council member, I did ask the people at City Hall, I said, okay, now like this event, I've got the invite.
Right.
Do I pay for that, or does the city pay for that? I mean, some of these are $50 dinners, and you know, if you, as a council member, should be at these things, maybe there's 10 of them in a month. I mean, it adds up, and there's no real stipend to offset that.
Right.
So they
you can't expense it.
No, and what they said was, well, you know, maybe you know, the police department or the fire department or Public Works or even Riverside Public Utilities, maybe they've got an empty seat at the table.
Huh.
So
That's
I'd have to find out if they had an empty seat.
I mean, it's a little awkward.
Yes, it is. And you feel kind of funny doing that. But, you know, it got me to thinking about, well, okay, what's the process here? And do we need to really have that many people at a table?
And here's another question. I know often maybe the chamber will say, please come be our guest.
Right.
That brings up a whole host of issues, because then
does.
technically it's a contribution.
Right.
And you have to file that
700 form.
On your 700 form.
Yes, we do.
So it gets complicated.
Yes.
But aside from that, so you thought to yourself, you know, thinking is a dangerous thing. What do we do here? You know, how does this work? It's not that there's a big scandal.
No, not at all.
No scandal here, but you bring up a valid concern.
Yes. And, you know, sometimes things have a way of, you know, well-intentioned things grow and grow a little bit beyond where maybe they should be. So at our recent Governmental Affairs Committee meeting, we discussed that very issue. It was brought up. You know, what do we want to do with these sponsorships? Do we want to put any limits on them? Do we want to put any constraints?
And here's a question, if I may ask. You know, in some cities, I'll take Los Angeles for example, it's Department of Water and Power.
Right.
The fights between the city and the DWP are notorious.
Yes.
Over
historic
turf. Over turf and who has say and control. And so, can the city of Riverside, as a city, put limits on RPU, for example, Riverside Public Utilities?
Yes, we can.
You can. So it's not quite as contentious as we see
We have
in
a
LA.
board of public utilities that we appoint.
But so does LA.
Right, but just about everything that RPU board brings forward for our approval, you know, we're the final approving authority for rate increases and certain monies being spent, other than a small amount that is by our charter dictated for them to be able to, you know, approve like certain things like a repair of pipes or things like that.
So the question becomes, how involved do you get?
Exactly.
You know, you can get as involved as to every expenditure, which is probably not desirable, or you can take a hands-off approach, which arguably may not be desirable.
Right, and you know, I think just having a good philosophy of oversight and providing that legislative oversight from the council members, from the electeds, you know, how would you feel as the public looking in? What would be your best practices? And that's something that needs to be done.
You know when you see it.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
Are you going to spearhead a move to create a formula, create a cap on these types of sponsorships?
Well, what we did is we asked staff to look at this and to see what type of caps there'd be. Look back on how much is being spent, what we're currently doing. And one thing I brought up is I said, we certainly want these department heads to be represented actually at the community and be that representative to the people so they can have contact. Some of the different movers and shakers in the community that go to these events, they should see the general manager or the city, of RPU. They should see some of these others. But do some of the different people down the food chain, do they all need to go?
Right.
I mean, maybe they don't want to go, but they feel they have to.
That's a good point.
And maybe they should get a good night's sleep so that they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed the next day at work.
The flip side is, what if you want to go?
Exactly.
And so on the one hand, it's awkward for you to ask. On the other hand, it's awkward for the general manager or assistant general manager to say no.
Yes.
So,
and actually, we worked on that. What they did is they took the pot of money that was designed for different things for council that they would just, it was the accountability account, so to speak. And like if we need something that's above and beyond, let's say, thank you cards or something like that, that comes out of the council members' very small pot of money that they get to spend each year, and it gets recharged every year. Well, what they did is they split that apart and said, okay, now for going to these events, if you want to go, it comes out of that pot.
But it's so small.
It is small, but I think it's going to be enough, and they'll probably adjust it depending on how this works on this transferring, where we now will pay out of our kitty, and then we're responsible to the public on what we spend it on.
So let me ask you separately then about advertisements,
yes,
because that's a little different. So we're in a drought,
right?
And RPU, Riverside Public Utilities, presumably could, here's an example. I every month I get an email blast from the Riverside Press Enterprise, and it details how much water was used by Riverside residents. And I can tell that email blast was paid for by Riverside Public Utilities.
Right.
I love it. It's fascinating to me. But that's an advertisement, essentially.
Well, and also we're advertising in full-page panels in the local press enterprise, and some of it is the I Own It program that some in the community have criticized, that it's really...
I Own It means, is it low income?
No, what it was is to tell the people that they own their own public utility. But the response from some of the public has been, well, we know we own it, and don't tell us that we know that we own something.
We don't need some, yeah.
And the idea
I
is...
own it, I see.
Yes,
We own it.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to get buy-in, from the community. But to me, sending out the message on drought or that we have, low income assistance or things like that, I think is probably a proper channel for that, and maybe a little bit better bang for the buck.
So then what can you do as a council member, as a council, to create an environment whereby you're giving the latitude that these folks need to advertise as they see fit, but not we own it.
Right. And that's what we're asking for is a balance. We're asking for to have some oversight into making sure that the categories that they advertise in are the proper categories, and that it's not something of more advertising that's, I don't know, lack of a better word, some fluff, where it's actually a key message that goes out.
So what does that look like? Do you pass an ordinance? Do you pass a regulation? Do you create just a guidance? How does that look?
We could pass an ordinance. We could also, get city management to adopt some different administrative policies that would tailor things to exactly how these monies should be spent in certain circumstances. And if there's a question, then they can come before us, and we'll say, that's probably not a good thing to spend.
So you're just starting this process.
Yes.
Have you spoken with sister cities? I don't mean international. I mean local cities.
Yes, and what we've done is we've asked staff on their report to compare what others are doing, and maybe they've got some policies that are in place that we can mirror and not have to reinvent the wheel.
Any ideas? I don't know any. I haven't heard this situation.
I don't know. I don't know if others have looked into this or not. We have to find communities that own their own, public utility or their own utility.
Sure. His name is Mike Soubirous. He is a member of the Riverside City Council. Of course, you can watch additional episodes of our program, Charter Local Edition, by going to our website. Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Charter Local Edition. We are in the Inland Empire today. My name is Brad Palmer. This is Charter Local Edition.